It was a quiet Monday morning, one of those gray, slow-moving days where the clouds seemed to rest heavy against the windows. That's when George walked into my office. He was 76, a retired postman, and had been widowed for 5 years. His steps were slow, deliberate. Not painful, exactly, just cautious. Like each joint had forgotten what it once meant to move freely. His chart told me the usual things: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, borderline prediabetes. Nothing I hadn't seen 100 times before. But George wasn't just another patient on paper. He was tired. And not just physically. He sat down with a quiet sigh, looked me in the eye, and said, "Doc, I don't feel bad exactly. Just like I'm fading." Those words landed heavier than any lab result. Fading. That's not something you can treat with medication. That kind of tiredness, the kind that settles into your bones and your spirit, comes from something deeper. A lack of energy, yes, but also a lack of purpose. Of rhythm. Of vitality. So I didn't pull out a prescription pad. I asked him something simpler. "Tell me about your mornings." He gave a half smile, half shrug. "Same as always. Toast. Coffee. Sit in the chair. Watch the news. Sometimes I doze off again before lunch." That routine, familiar, automatic, wasn't hurting him. But it wasn't helping him either. It was hollow. Lifeless. And when your first few hours of the day are empty, it sets the tone for everything that follows. I looked at him for a moment and said, "What if we started there?" He raised an eyebrow. "Started where?" "Breakfast," I said. "What if we gave your morning some power again?" That's when the idea began, not of a strict diet or a fitness plan, but of one small shift. Something simple, something manageable. A reason to move. A reason to care. George didn't know it yet, but that question marked the beginning of his comeback. Because sometimes, health doesn't begin with medicine. It begins with a single, quiet moment. And a willingness to try something new. After George shared his quiet, tired routine with me, toast, coffee, and long hours alone, I leaned forward and said something that surprises a lot of my older patients. "George, the way you start your morning can change your entire day." He looked at me with curiosity, but also a bit of skepticism. I went on. "You see, our mornings do more than get us out of bed. They set the tone for how we think, feel, and move. Especially as we age, those first few hours are precious. They're the most alert hours. The hours when your body is most ready to absorb nutrients, to stretch, to breathe, to begin again." He nodded slowly. I could tell he was listening, even if he wasn't sure where this was headed. Then I said it. "I want you to start your day with a smoothie." George blinked. "A smoothie? Like what my granddaughter gets at Jamba Juice?" I laughed. "Not quite. I'm talking about a real, homemade smoothie. One that's packed with nutrients your body craves: fiber, antioxidants, healthy fats, plant-based protein, all in one glass." He raised an eyebrow. "So, you want me to drink salad for breakfast?" "Not salad," I said with a grin, "but something better. Something that can help you feel more awake before 10 a.m., something that might even ease your joint pain, sharpen your memory, and steady your mood." Now I had his attention. I explained that the right smoothie can deliver an entire morning's worth of nutrition in just a few sips. And it doesn't have to be complicated. A banana. A handful of frozen berries. A scoop of oats. Some flaxseed. A little spinach. Maybe half an avocado or a spoon of peanut butter. Add plant milk or water. Blend. Done. No pots. No pans. No waiting. Just nourishment in under 5 minutes. George leaned back and let out a low chuckle. Well, Doc, I've done stranger things in my life. Why not try drinking breakfast? And that was the deal. 1 smoothie. 1 week. No promises, no pressure. Just a small experiment to see if his body and maybe even his spirit would notice. And that's the beautiful thing about food. Especially for seniors. It doesn't just fuel the body. It sends a message, you matter. It tells your brain that today is worth showing up for. I've seen it again and again. The right kind of breakfast, real food, colorful food, food that grew from the ground wakes up more than your metabolism. It wakes up your hope. So George went home with a shopping list and a basic blender I recommended from the pharmacy down the street. He wasn't sure what would happen. But he was willing to try. And sometimes, willingness is all you need to start changing your life. Once George agreed to give the smoothie routine a try, we worked together to create a simple, balanced recipe. I explained that the goal wasn't to make a meal replacement or a weight loss miracle. No, this was about something far more fundamental, fuel. Fuel for his brain, his heart, and, most importantly, fuel for his day. Here's what we came up with. Base, the foundation of every smoothie should be something light but hydrating. I recommended almond milk for its low sugar content and creamy texture. He could also use water if he preferred. The goal was something to carry the other ingredients smooth and easy to drink. Fruits, we chose banana and frozen berries. Bananas add natural sweetness, while frozen berries pack a punch of antioxidants. Both are excellent sources of vitamins, and they provide the necessary carbohydrates to keep George energized throughout the morning. The antioxidants would help protect his cells, while the natural sugars would give him the energy he needed to get moving. Greens, George was skeptical about the spinach at first. Isn't that for salads, Doc? He asked, eyebrow raised. I laughed and reassured him that he wouldn't taste it. The spinach was there for its nutrients, specifically fiber, vitamins A and C, and iron. It's a powerhouse that would help his body stay strong without him even realizing it. Healthy fat. Here, we had a choice, half an avocado or a spoonful of peanut butter. Both provide healthy fats that help the body absorb vitamins more efficiently. Avocados would make the smoothie extra creamy, while peanut butter would add protein and a bit of flavor that he liked. Either one would keep his heart healthy and help regulate his blood sugar levels throughout the day. Boosts, to round it all out, I suggested adding chia seeds, oats, or flaxseed. These are rich in fiber, omega-3 fatty acids, and antioxidants. They would keep his digestive system happy and help him feel full longer, giving him that steady, sustained energy rather than the crash he'd get from his usual toast and coffee. We kept it simple. No cooking. No chopping. Just 5 minutes in the morning, pour, blend, and drink. I made it clear to George that it wasn't about counting calories or obsessing over the scale. This was about giving his body the nutrients it needed to operate at its best. Brain fuel to help him think sharper. Heart fuel to support his circulation. And, most importantly, energy to live, to get out of bed with more than just the bare minimum, to move through the day with purpose, and to enjoy the simple things again. You're not trying to lose weight or follow some new diet trend, I explained. This is about making a habit of feeling good. When you start your day with real food, you give your body the chance to heal. To feel more awake. To feel more alive. He looked at me thoughtfully, taking it all in. All right, document. I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? And so, he did. Every morning for the next week, George mixed his ingredients, pressed the button on his blender, and sipped his smoothie before sitting down to read the newspaper. No fuss, no stress, just a small but powerful habit to start his day. I wasn't sure what kind of changes George would feel immediately, but I knew something important was happening. It wasn't just about the smoothie. It was about showing George and anyone in his situation that the power to feel better was right in front of him. And that small habit? It might just be the first step toward a new chapter in his life. George walked into my office exactly 1 week after we started his new morning smoothie routine. There was something different about him, a subtle shift, but noticeable. "I'm not saying I'm 20 again, Doc," he began with a slight smile, his voice still steady but carrying a new tone. "But I didn't nap yesterday. And I walked to the post office just because." His words weren't dramatic. There were no grand declarations. But in his voice, there was something new. It wasn't just the absence of fatigue, it was life. It was as if he'd remembered how it felt to simply be awake. "I feel lighter, Doc," he continued. "I'm not dragging myself through the day anymore. It's like the fog is lifting." I leaned back in my chair, listening. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. The smoothie wasn't just about food, it was about a change in mindset, a small ritual that began the day with purpose. George wasn't just eating better, he was living better. He went on to tell me that his mornings had become easier. The smoothie gave him a feeling of fullness without weighing him down. He felt satisfied but not sluggish. His stomach was happier, too, with his bathroom habits improving. But what really caught my attention was his newfound energy. The very next day, he'd walk to the post office, something so simple, but a significant accomplishment for someone who had been moving carefully, almost hesitantly, for so long. And it wasn't just physical energy. He had a new mental clarity that he hadn't had in a while. "I used to feel like I was always waiting for the day to be over," he confessed. "Now, I actually look forward to getting up." I smiled, feeling a sense of pride. But it wasn't just about the physical benefits, the weight loss, the better digestion, the energy boost. It was about a new mindset, a new outlook on the day ahead. George was having fun with the smoothie. He was experimenting with flavors, adding a pinch of cinnamon, or even a bit of cocoa for a touch of indulgence. It had become a little ritual, one he looked forward to each morning. The act of blending up something nutritious had transformed into something personal, something he could control. This wasn't just a drink anymore. It wasn't just a diet or another fad. It had become part of his morning rhythm, a reason to start his day on a positive note. The simplicity of it, the ease, the minimal effort made it feel sustainable. And, most importantly, it felt good. "I think I'm starting to understand what you meant," George said thoughtfully. "It's not just about the smoothie. It's about taking care of myself. Starting the day with something that's good for me." I nodded. "Exactly. It's a small change, but it makes a big difference over time. It's about creating habits that support the life you want to live." And as we wrapped up our session, I could see it in his eyes. George was waking up to something new. Not just in his body, but in his life. It wasn't about feeling young again. It was about feeling alive. Over the next month, I noticed a deeper shift in George. His progress was no longer limited to the mornings or the smoothies. It was as if something had unlocked within him, a new perspective on how he could live his life. It started with small changes. He swapped out his afternoon cookie for a handful of walnuts. Simple, but telling. Instead of reaching for the sugary comfort that had once been his go-to snack, he chose a healthier alternative, one packed with heart-healthy fats and protein. It wasn't a drastic change, but it was one that aligned with his new commitment to feeling better. Next, George made a more significant adjustment. he replaced red meat with a hearty lentil soup. This was a choice I'd been gently encouraging, not for weight loss or a quick fix, but because plant-based foods like lentils are full of fiber, protein, and essential nutrients that support heart health and digestion. And then there was the yoga class. At first, George was hesitant. But after hearing me talk about the benefits of low-impact exercises for joint health and overall vitality, he decided to give it a try. Once a week. Just one class to start. The transformation wasn't instant. It never is. But it was steady. Over time, the numbers on his chart started to show change, too. His blood pressure dropped by 15 points, a clear sign that his body was responding to the shift in diet and exercise. His cholesterol levels improved, and his sleep became deeper, more restful. He wasn't waking up in the middle of the night anymore, his body no longer feeling restless from the inflammation and joint pain that had once plagued him. But more than any of the physical changes, it was the emotional shift that caught my attention. George started smiling more. It was subtle at first. But then, one day, he sat in my office with a photo album in hand, flipping through pictures of his garden. "Look at these," he said, showing me his newly planted flowers, the vegetables that were starting to sprout. He'd always enjoyed gardening, but now it was more than a hobby. It had become a way to connect with nature and himself. He also started calling his daughter more. It wasn't just about checking in, it was about sharing. About telling her how his day was going, what he was learning, and, of course, how much he was enjoying his smoothies. The biggest shift, though, was that George was no longer keeping his progress to himself. He'd become a quiet ambassador for healthy living in his little corner of the world. His neighbor, who'd always teased him about his health food habits, now asked for smoothie tips. "What do you put in that green drink of yours?" he asked, genuinely curious. And George shared his secrets proudly. It wasn't just about the food anymore. It was about something far deeper. George was no longer a passive passenger in his own life. He had found a way to take control. The smoothies were just the beginning. They were the spark that had ignited a whole new way of living. When you've lived as long as George has, it can be easy to feel like you've passed the point of change. Like things are just the way they are, and that's how they'll stay. But George proved that it's never too late to take charge of your health, to change your habits, and to start living with intention. It wasn't about perfection. It was about progress. About making choices that aligned with his health goals, and most importantly, his desire to feel alive. And as we ended our session, I couldn't help but smile. George had gone from feeling like he was fading to thriving. Not because he had become a new person, but because he had become a more empowered version of himself. This wasn't just about smoothies. It was about taking ownership of his body, his life, and his future. I remember asking George one afternoon, a few weeks into his new routine, "What surprised you the most about all of this?" He paused for a moment, then smiled gently and said, "I didn't think breakfast could change my life. But it gave me something to look forward to." That answer stayed with me. Because for many seniors, the world begins to shrink over time. Friends pass away. Energy fades. The simple act of walking across the room can become a challenge. Each morning can feel more like a burden than a beginning. There aren't many things left to look forward to. But George's morning smoothie, simple, quick, no fuss, became an anchor in his day. A tiny act of self-care, repeated daily. A habit that reminded him he still mattered. And something incredible happened. It wasn't just his body that improved. His spirit lifted, too. He started to believe in himself again. He felt capable. He felt like someone who still deserved to feel good, to take care of himself. He told me once that the smoothie gave him something to talk about with his new neighbor. They swapped recipes, shared a few laughs. George, the man who once didn't want to leave the house, now had stories to tell. That's what this is really about. Not just nutrition. Not just vitamins or cholesterol numbers. It's about joy, confidence, connection. And sometimes, the smallest changes spark the deepest healing. You see, it's never just about food. It's about how food makes you feel, what it allows you to do, and who you become when you start believing that you're worth the effort. For George, it all started with one smoothie. And from that small glass, came a new beginning. If you're watching this and wondering, could this work for me? The answer is yes. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all the advice out there, especially when it comes to health. Smoothie recipes, supplements, superfoods. It can seem like you need to be a chef, or even a nutrition expert, to take control of your health. But that's not true. You don't need fancy powders or complex recipes. You don't need to cook a feast in the kitchen. Start with something simple. Something you can make every day, without stress or confusion. Here's the basic formula. Frozen berries, full of antioxidants to support your immune system. Oats, a whole grain, packed with fiber to help keep you full and regulate digestion. Water or milk, the base, hydrating and nourishing. A banana, for natural sweetness and a boost of potassium to help with muscle function. Something green, like spinach or kale, loaded with vitamins and minerals. Blend. Sip. Repeat. That's it. A simple, 5-minute routine that can make a huge difference in how you feel. Now, I'm not asking you to do this for weight loss or to follow the latest health trend. I'm asking you to do it for how it makes you feel. Give it a week. Just 1 week. Take note of how your energy changes, how your mood shifts, how your body responds. It's not about immediate results, it's about the subtle shifts that happen over time when you consistently nourish your body with real, whole foods. And here's the thing, just like George, you might find that it's not just a smoothie. It's a new beginning. A new routine that sets a positive tone for the rest of your day. A small, easy action that leads to bigger changes in your health, energy, and life. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be consistent. So, take a step today. Blend up a smoothie, sip it slowly, and notice how you feel. And when you're ready, you can build from there, just like George did. You're never too old to start making changes that can help you live a fuller, more energized life. It's not about perfection. It's about taking that first step. And that first step can be as simple as a smoothie. So here's what I'll leave you with. Feed yourself like someone who still matters. Move like someone who still has stories to tell. And start each morning like it's a promise, not a burden. George made a change. He took a simple step, one smoothie at a time, and transformed his days. His energy, his health, his outlook on life, they all shifted. And it wasn't magic. It was consistency. Small, powerful choices. You can do it too. If you're looking for a sign that it's not too late to take control of your health, here it is. You don't need to wait for a big life event or a dramatic transformation. You just need to begin. Start with one simple change, and let it grow from there. Remember, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. One step. One smoothie. One choice at a time. And when you do, I'll be right here, cheering you on. Because I believe in you, just like I believe in George. You can take this step, and make it your own. Start today, and see where this journey takes you. Your future begins with how you choose to live right now. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope George's story inspired you to make one small change that could lead to big results in your own life. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. I've got more stories, tips, and advice coming your way to help you live a healthier, happier life. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, every small step counts. I'll see you in the next video.